Hello everyone and welcome to the Gunpla Network. I'm the Spicer and today we'll be taking a look at the real grade Exia. This review is brought to you by none other than Canadian Gundam, your one-stop shop for all your Plamo and Gunpla needs here in North America. When you're checking out Canadian Gundam's catalog and placing your order, don't forget to use the promo code Gunpla Network for 10% off. Now, in terms of just my overall thoughts on the kit, it was a really fun build. Now, I've built a real grade Exia before, way back when it was pretty new when it came out, and there are a couple of build things that are a little bit finicky. There are some small pieces, there's some pieces that if they fall, they're gone forever, unless you're just a master detective. But overall, it is a much more stable, much more solid build than a lot of real grades. Just for comparison, this is going to be a lot more like the real grade red frame or the real grade tall geese. It's very sturdy, it's very stable. There are a few finicky parts, but for the most part, it's going to pose well on the ground. You can have it in static poses and it's going to look good, dynamic poses, on the ground, in the air, it doesn't matter. It's just a really solid, all-around good kit. It doesn't have weight issues. It's just kind of what I perceive to be the first really stable real grade. Now, of course, things like the RX-78-2 and the Zaku's are more than fine, but they are going to have some of those smaller pieces that aren't necessarily fit as well. Then you get into the Seed line where everything's bombastic with big backpacks and you have to have a stand pretty much, or lean it up against a wall because it's not going to stand pretty much any other way. And then some of those pieces are finicky. This is the first to kind of follow that trend of the real, or start the trend of the real grade in the tall geese, where it's not the flashiest thing in the world, but it's executed very well. In terms of the problematic pieces, mostly are the little incandescent plastic strips that go in the legs and on the shoulders. They're not problematic in terms of putting them in, but if you drop one of them, there's a good chance it's gone forever. That is what happened to the first real grade Exia I had. So keep that in mind. They do look really good when they're in, just be very careful. Outside of that, the only other thing I've had come off is the blue pieces on the side of the shield, which is why you don't see it here, because while I was doing the posing for this video, the shield fell off and one of those blue pieces has disappeared into the ether. So no, it does come with a shield, it does look good, but you're probably going to want to super glue the two blue pieces on the sides because it's not like they move anyway. But other than that, the Exia is one of my favorite real grades because it just does what it needs to do. It's not elaborate, it's very well executed, and it's very posable. In terms of the visuals, the Exia just does what it needs to do, and it does it well. It's not trying to overdo it. You do have a good amount of surface detail. You have some parts showing through, like those kind of incandescent parts in the legs. You have the green stickers really reflecting light well when the light hits it. So you have some really nice visual parts to the body. Now, of course, the accessories, you're going to have the chrome swords and everything, which really do add an extra level to it visually speaking, and I do like that. It is a lot more eye-catching than what we got with, say, like the 00 Riser. But just generally speaking, if you build this out of box and put little effort into it, even no effort, the difference between the white, the bone white, the two shades of blue, the red, the green, just perfectly mixed throughout the body, it's going to look good. It may blend a little bit more with the high grades. Of course, it's going to stand out, but if you don't do anything to it, it's going to blend slightly more with those. The more you put love into this with panel lining, stickers, or top coats, or even paint, I guess, if you want to, is going to stand out more. And this is something that, if you want something to show off on a shelf, this is going to be a good one. You're not going to need a stand if you want one. It does help, but visually speaking, if you can put this in a place where there's some decent lighting, the green is really going to show off here. Even in the arms, the legs, and the chest here on the Exia, when the light hits it just right, it shines. It looks Maybe not like it has an LED, but it is much brighter and stands out. And that's part of what I really like about this kit. Apart from the color separation and the surface detailing, it's just little thoughts like those. They could have put some muted green stickers or put in other things. They could have cut some corners here and they didn't, which I think is where the Exia kind of started to maybe go slightly less from vanity to practicality, but still trying to balance that line of, okay, we need this to look really good. It's more of a showpiece, but we also want people to be able to move it around without it just disintegrating into their hands. So as we kind of look in a finer detail version here, you can see the legs. You do have some really good lining opportunities on the feet, the little front skirt flappy thing on the foot. You've got the calves, then you've got the thighs. And of course on the top portion as well, you're going to have not as much. Mostly it's going to be in the head. I really don't mind it, honestly. I think I could have probably done a little more in the chest, but I think overall, visually speaking, there's not a whole lot you need to do for this to look good. In terms of posability, as I've mentioned before, if you don't want to put this on a display base, you don't have to. It's balanced enough, and you've got enough source material to pull from to be able to put really nice ground-based poses on display with this kit. Now, you have a variety of different weapons. You've got the two chromed out GN swords there on the hips, the short sword and the long sword. You have the GN sword on the Exia's arm, so you've got the long blade as it's extended here that has the beam rifle in it. You have 4 beam sabers, or 2 real beam sabers and 2 beam daggers that are normally plugged into the back. I've removed them here so I don't lose them, but I will show you what those look like a little later. You have a variety of hands. You've got 2 pre-molded Holdy Stuff hands, which are the best thing to use. You can use the real grade style hands, but I've just not had a lot of success with them. So use the Holding Stuff hands if they're actually going to be holding a weapon. You can get some pretty expressive, nice poses out of the real grade hands if you know what you're doing, but be a little wary of them. Of course, you don't want to lose any pieces or anything of that nature. But it is really nice that you get some extended hands for more expressive, grabby, reachy motions. And as you can see here with these, you actually have a pretty nice, reasonable, natural looking reaching pose. Now, you can use this not only to reach, but to like offer a hand out, which you can also do with the real grade hands, just not quite as effective in my opinion. Any kind of pre-molded hand's always going to beat something that's a thumb, a finger, and then the other 3 fingers are attached to it. But largely speaking, you have a lot of variety here, and with this not being quite as fragile as some of the other real grades out there, especially before this one, you can go ahead and move it around, play with it, pose it, without being too worrisome of things disappearing. Once it's all built, there's a small handful of things that may come off. The only thing I've had come off that I've kind of been worried about losing on the main body, there's the little wrist covers that go kind of under where the wrist would attach. I've only had those fall off once, and that was because the way I was trying to pose the arm kind of pushed it a little bit. But overall, it's stable enough. If you want to do any kind of ground poses, you absolutely can. Now, if you want to throw it up in the air, you can do that as well. It looks just fine. And if you want to pose it up against, say, a high-grade overflag, it looks good. It holds its own. It's right in scale with it, as you'd expect. Of course, it's going to look more detailed, but the nice thing with the overflag is it's pretty simplistic design in terms of color separation and everything, so you don't have to worry too much about it. Overall, the real grade Exia is a wonderful machine to pose, and you're going to have a lot of options, so if you like kind of taking things down every couple of weeks or month or so and just change how it's posed on your shelf, this is a great kit for doing something like that. In terms of gimmicks and accessories, this is actually where I want to start, so it's a good transition. The beam saber storage on the Exia is one of the more unique and one of the better thought out options in terms of actually storing a beam saber. Of course, I'm always going to be partial to storing it in the calf like you have with the ground type Gundams, but having it on a swivel on the skirt and on the back of the shoulders is actually really cool. And you can see here with the real grade Exia, they gave you enough posability not only in the holster on the back skirt, but also in the arm and those real grade hands to be able to act like it's grabbing it. So you can get some really interesting poses and shots out of this, and then you have a little hinge on the ones in the shoulder, which are a little harder to reach. You can kind of do it, it just doesn't play well on camera because you're pretty much blocking the whole main body of the mobile suit by reaching, but you can put it in some really cool, interesting poses utilizing that technology. You also have the beam saber and then the beam dagger, which is really a nice thing. I always wished more mobile suits would do this. Like, you have the Age 1 that had this, then you have the Exia, but that's really the only two. I know there's not a lot of practicality in it if you have a beam weapon that can be pretty much as long as you want. I guess technically UC suits could do it if they just turned down their power, but overall I think this is such a cool looking design, and it really bums me out we don't see it other places, but having that option is really nice. And fun fact, the GN Sword 3, the top and bottom blaster ports on it actually fit these beam saber hilts, or beam saber blades, so you can look like it's shooting. It doesn't work with the GN Sword 1 that comes with the Exia, unfortunately, but it is just kind of a neat little addition. Now, in terms of the Exia and its weapons and gimmicks, I would be remiss not to talk about those nice chrome-plated GN Swords GN Short Sword and Long Sword, and then the GN Sword itself, because that chrome is so cool. Chrome plating looks great, especially on a weapon where you're not really as worried too much about touching it. The whole body chrome mobile suits are kind of hard to mess with because, like, your thumbprints get everywhere and you gotta wipe it off, and it's almost stressful to deal with. But with something like this, you don't have to have that worry or that concern in mind nearly as much. Sure, it's still there a little bit, but it's on a weapon. You're really not maneuvering the weapon as much as you are the mobile suit, so it's kind of cool to see that. It does stand out on your shelf. If you got, once again, that light hitting it just right, it's going to shine, it's going to shimmer, it's going to be reflective. It's really cool, and I honestly feel like it's a downgrade to lose this to go to like the GN Sword 2s and the GN Sword 3, as cool as those are. I really wish they would have been in chrome. It looks so cool. I just can't get over that fact. But overall, these weapons are really, really neat. The swinging gimmick on the GN Sword works well. The blaster looks fine, I guess. It's a blaster. That's pretty much its beam rifle. It's what you get. And outside of that, the only other gimmick I can really think of that is readily easily noticeable when you're just looking at it on a shelf is the incandescent parts in the legs. Once again, lighting is really big with this kit, because if you can hit the lighting just right, those green gene condensers in the legs, especially in the chest and the elbows, are going to shine bright. They're going to look really good, very distinct looking. You'll also have the chrome on those GN Sword blades. You'll also have that incandescent part in the leg, which is going to give a nice shimmer. So in terms of what you actually get a lot for such a small kit, and you have so many different options of posability that, like I said, it's really something. If you want to change this pose really regularly, you have a lot of options at your disposal. All in all, I have to say, if you're a 00 fan, this is a must-buy. If you're a fan of the Exia, it's a must-buy. And generally, if you just like building a good kit and you want something at least a little bit different, this is a must-buy. Now, of course, it's not going to be the most different mobile suit you'll ever build, but it's nice, it's sturdy, and it's solid. In terms of real grades, if you've always had the concern, especially with like the seed stuff of, oh, it just falls apart, it disintegrates, it's too bag heavy, this is a good change of pace. This is going to be very in line with the red frame and the tall geese. If you want something just nice, simple, stable, this is your go-to if you've not built it. And of course, if you haven't seen a review of the high-grade GN arms, fun fact, this will fit in there with the included display adapter. So if you do want to add your real grade Exia to the GN arms, you can do so, which is kind of a cool little additional benefit. But that is all I have to say. This is a phenomenal kit. As I've said, I've bought it twice at this point because I missed it. I was really sad I didn't have it anymore, so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get it. It's gonna be cool. And it is. So if you have any questions, pop them in those comments down below. I will do my best to answer them, and of course, if you've built it yourself, let us know how that build process went for you. I've been the Spicer. This has been the Gunpla Network with the Real Great Exia, and as always, friends, keep on building.